Welcome aboard the Story Ark. I'm your captain, Kenny Mears, and let's take a voyage together.
Telling stories to our kids is a practice as old as time. They are one of the ways we best connect with our family. Today's story is a lovely creation of the storyteller Celeste Teal Larkin, who made this story for her baby. Here's Celeste.
All right, so hello everyone. My name is Celeste Teal Larkin, and I got into storytelling. I actually don't remember exactly who asked me or how my contact got shared, but it was like maybe 4 or so years ago. I was invited to tell stories at the Redstone Highland Games festival in St. George, Utah. And so I did that with a couple of people that I knew and some people that I didn't. So I got introduced to John, and he kind of introduced me to the Utah Storytelling Guild. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. I was very, very busy, so I didn't have the time to join or anything at that time. So I told stories all day at the festival. I had this one story about this whirlpool off the coast of Scotland and a legend of how it came to be, and it was so fun and I kind of got hooked. I've always loved telling stories. I am a singer. I sing opera and classical music, and I sing musical theater too, so that has usually been my how I tell my stories is through like theater and things like that. But the idea of just oral storytelling was really, really interesting to me. So I kind of got introduced to it through the Scottish Games. And then I couldn't do the next year, but I did the following year, which was last year. And I was pregnant at the time with my first baby. And I was thinking, I really want to be able to tell her stories. And I really like this idea of like the oral storytelling, because it reminds me of like the old bards, that would go from town to town and tell these like short and long form stories to the villagers, and I just thought that was their movies of the time, that was their entertainment, and I thought there was something really cool about being able to like in your mind keep that many stories archived. And then I also did, around this time, I did a Waldorf training, Waldorf education through Rudolf Steiner, if you want to look into it. But they, in Steiner schools or in Waldorf schools, they learn through storytelling, and specifically through oral storytelling. They'll share the story, they'll tell the story with the kids, and then they'll draw out a picture and like summarize it and write out a sentence together. And so I loved that they learned all these stories in this Waldorf education. And so I'm considering doing something like that with my daughter as she gets older, maybe a homeschool style, maybe a co-op, I'm not exactly sure, but I was like, well, I better get better at storytelling. So then I ended up joining the Utah Storytelling Guild. I still do the Scottish Games every year. That's like Christmas for me in April. And then I haven't been able to do too much else on top of that because I just have like this 1-year-old running around now. But I try to find little opportunities here and there. So now here I am. So that's my little introduction. The story that I'm going to tell is actually one that I wrote. It kind of evolved over time. I was trying to get my baby to go to sleep one of those nights when she just did not want to go to sleep. And so I just kind of made up this story about a little man who lived in a shoe. And then over time in my mind, it kind of evolved, and I kind of fine-tuned it. So this is the story, and I've told her a couple times. We'll see as she gets older how it changes. Maybe it will become a series. So this is the story. A long time ago, in a time before time, in a forest nearby, there lived a little village with little people. They lived in things like shoes and teapots. They wanted me to tell you a story that happened to them one day, and so this is what happened. There was a little man who lived in a shoe, a boot to be precise. At the top of the boot, where you'd put your foot in, there was a thatched roof that kept him warm and dry. You'd walk down the stairs where the heel was, and you'd find a warm fireplace and a cozy chair where he would relax at the end of the day until his eyes got so droopy he couldn't keep them awake. If you walked over to where the little toe would usually reside, that's where his kitchen was. He had a small cupboard with things like mugs and bowls, and he had a big pot that he would make his vegetable stew in, where he would harvest his vegetables from his garden outside. Where the big toe would wiggle is where the front door was, and it had a sign on the outside that said, "Welcome, friends, come in." On this particular evening, the little man came in from working in his garden that day. He chopped up his vegetables and made his vegetable stew. Then he sat by his hearth and relaxed until his eyes got so droopy he couldn't keep them awake. He walked up the stairs and put on his nightcap. He laid his head down on his pillow filled with a few fingerfuls of cotton and pulled up his wool blanket all the way to his chin and fell fast asleep. Most of the night he stayed nice and dry and slept soundly. Then, all of a sudden, the rain fairies blew in with a big blustery storm, and it began to rain on his little roof. It rained so hard that soon the little man awoke to a raindrop being touched on his nose. Drip, drip, drop, drip, drip, drop. There was a leak in his roof. He awoke with a start. He scurried down to his kitchen and picked out a mug from his cupboard. He took it back up his stairs and placed it underneath the leak on his bed. He cuddled next to the mug, and before he went back to sleep, he said a prayer to the rain fairies. "Rain, rain, may you help my garden grow big and strong, and may my nose stay dry all the night long." And he went back to sleep. Pretty soon, it rained harder and harder, and the leak got bigger and faster, and he awoke to feeling his clothes wet and soaked. He hurried down the stairs and got a big bowl from his cupboard, brought it back up, and replaced it with the mug. Then he cuddled next to the bowl and said a prayer to the rain fairies before he went back to sleep. "Rain, rain, may you help my garden grow big and strong, and may my nose and my clothes stay dry all the night long." And he went back to sleep. Pretty soon, the rain got heavier and heavier, and that leak got bigger and bigger and faster, and the little man awoke to find that his bed was soaked with water. He scurried down the stairs and got his big stew pot, and he took that back up the stairs and replaced it with the bowl. At this point, he only had the bottom of the bed left that was a little bit dry, and he cuddled in a ball in the bottom half of the bed, cuddling next to the pot, and he said one last prayer to the rain fairies. "Rain, rain, may you help my garden grow big and strong, and may my nose and my clothes and my bed stay dry all the night long." And he went back to sleep. In the morning he woke and he knew what to do. He went down his stairs, put on his hat and his boots, and he walked down the lane to meet his neighbor, a woman who was a widow and had 3 strapping, strong sons, and they lived together happily in a teapot. He knocked on the door and found the woman inside with her 3 boys. "How did you fare with the storm last night?" The woman said, "Oh, we did fine. It rattled us out a bit, but we're all in one piece." He told her of the leak on his roof, and he asked if her 3 sons would help him fix the leak in his roof today. She happily sent her 3 boys out the door with him, and they walked back to the man's shoe. They found a tall ladder made from twigs and small branches and put it on the side of his boot. The eldest son, the strongest of them all, climbed all the way up to the top of the ladder, followed by the middle son, who stood in the middle of the ladder, and then finally the youngest son stood on the bottom rungs of the ladder, followed by the little man who stood on the ground. He would hand a hammer to the youngest son would hand the hammer to the middle son would hand the hammer to the eldest son, and the eldest son would fix the roof, and this is how they went about it. The little man handed up nails and pieces of wood to patch up the roof. When they had finished their work, the youngest son came down the ladder, followed by the middle son, followed by the eldest son. The little man heartily thanked the 3 sons for helping him fix his roof. He was so focused and so busy trying to get all of the supplies together to fix his roof that he did not notice when he turned around. He saw that his garden had grown 3 times bigger that night. The zucchini was taller than he was, and the cherry tomatoes were so big that if he hugged them, he couldn't even feel his fingers on the other side. His potatoes were so large they looked like small hills in the mountain. And the 3 sons helped him harvest these vegetables. He said, "I will make you a hearty vegetable stew as a thank you for helping me fix my roof." They took the vegetables inside and chopped them up very nice and heated them in his big stew pot. They added some herbs from his garden like rosemary and thyme, and added a bit of salt to bring out all the flavors very nicely. Then they sat at the table and lit their dinner candle and shared their vegetable stew. The little man told stories of his younger life, and the 3 strapping boys told of their adventures together in the woods. They sat swapping stories and laughing at each other's jokes until they were all so full they could barely stand up. He finally sent the boys home back to their teapot, and he sat at his hearth so happy and full, counting his blessings of all the help he had received from the rain fairies and from the widow and from the 3 boys. Then, when his eyes could barely stay awake, he walked up to his bed, laid his head down on his pillow, stuffed with a few fingerfuls of cotton, and pulled his wool blanket all the way up to his chin. And he said one final prayer to the rain fairies, saying, "Rain, rain, thank you for helping my garden grow big and strong. And may my nose and clothes and bed stay dry all the night long." And he went back to sleep and slept very soundly and stayed so dry that night. And if things have not changed, they are still the same today. The end.
The Story Ark is a production of Food for Thought Audio. This episode was written, produced, and edited by me, Kenny Mears. We'd like to thank today's storyteller, Celeste Larkin, for sharing her story. She is a member of the Utah Storytelling Guild. Be sure to check her and the Guild out at utahstorytellingguild.website. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram, or wherever you listen to podcasts for more content. And until next time, thanks for listening.